the Saturn Awards, Denis Villeneuve had a very touching tribute and very nice comments about David Lynch and his passing. Obviously, both filmmakers had their own interpretation of Dune and had their own storied paths to get it made. So there's this connection between the two. So this was an article from Collider covering his comments, talking about David Lynch. The title of the article says, "It's like a planet left the solar system." Denis Villeneuve shares his grief about David Lynch's passing. On January 15th, 2025, the world lost a legendary artist when David Lynch passed away from emphysema at 78 years old. Known for an incredibly unique eye that brought audiences big screen titles like Eraserhead, Blue Velvet, and Mulholland Drive, as well as the iconic TV series Twin Peaks, the loss of the filmmaker is already felt deeply by anyone inspired by his work. One of those people grieving Lynch's passing is fellow director Denis Villeneuve. Aside from both being big names in the industry, the men have something else linking them together, as they both have adapted Frank Herbert's beloved novel, Dune, for the big screen. Sadly, the pair's paths never crossed, with Villeneuve revealing that he was wishing and dreaming to have met Lynch, but their schedules just never lined up. During a press conference following the Saturn Awards, at which Collider's Aidan Kelly was in attendance, Villeneuve, a self-described big fan of Lynch, shared his regrets about never having met his peer, saying, "Cinema is probably the closest art form, closest to dreams, awakened dreams, and David Lynch was definitely the master, the one who brought us closest to this dream state, and I sincerely wish that I had the chance to meet him. It would have not been possible to meet him in between both movies. I was wishing and dreaming to meet him once to be finished, just to pay homage to him." I'm not good with words. There are much better people describing the works of David Lynch, but his contribution to the Dune franchise is definitely iconic on its own, and there was a storied past when it came to his career, what kind of filmmaker he wanted to be. It is sad that the two Dune directors never met. David Lynch's experience working on Dune, unfortunately, was not a positive one. He had many challenges where it kind of just put him off on the franchise altogether. So I don't think he had ever seen Denis Villeneuve's Dune, but he knew the story. Villeneuve continues to talk about that, recognizing the pain and agony that his predecessor went through on his journey. Speaking about adapting Dune, Villeneuve added, "I'm very sad that he didn't have a nice experience with his own adaptation. At the same time, from my understanding, the pain he endured during making his own version of Dune brought to us Blue Velvet and then Wild at Heart and All They Did. There was an energy that came out of that." He even cites that the last version that was seen in theaters was not his. He didn't get final cut. He had a lot of issues there with the studio. The Spice Diver cut is what many feel is his true vision, and that is what is usually recommended by Dune fans to see. It has a lot of those extra scenes in there. So unfortunately, yeah, his experience was so negative, but it really did cut his teeth about what kind of filmmaker he wanted to be from that, moving on from that, and to having all those other productions and what he wanted to be and what kind of movies he wanted to make and what kind of stories he wanted to tell in the way he wanted to tell them. Even though that was a negative experience, it was definitely a learned experience. He learned a lot about himself as a filmmaker. You can't deny the iconic works that came after that. And on the set of Dune, meeting Kyle MacLachlan, which started their wonderful collaboration together. The article continues, "Despite Lynch's departure from this plane of existence, the director's projects will forever live on, and he'll continue to be an inspiration for years to come." Sharing his own sentiment on the subject, Villeneuve said, "So I don't know, it's very deeply sad that he left us. It's like when you know there's some filmmakers like that. When he left, it's like a planet left the solar system. It's really like he was his own planet. But there's some comfort knowing that he was still totally alive, totally creative, that he wanted to do another project. He's still here. I'm a big fan." All the Dune adaptations have moments or elements that I think are superior to other versions. And one of them, when it comes to David Lynch's version, he filmed on location and they built sets as well. And the costume design, the set design is great. It's unique and it looks good and well done and intricate. I liked the more opulent look of the Emperor, and that one scene, which is like truly iconic, of the Emperor meeting the Guild Navigator. We got the Guild Navigator on screen. And that was something that I appreciated because It wasn't from the book, but in a sense it kind of was, because it did reveal the political landscape, which was important to establish, of what is the Spacing Guild's role in this political tripod in the Empire. I like that they established that, and really well done as far as the props, and it's very strange. He really did embrace the strange and the surreal. He put some things in there that aren't in other adaptations, so I feel like really stand on their own and are a wonderful addition to the franchise itself as far as adapting Frank Herbert's story. Dr. Yue, they got Dean Stockwell, and of course Brad Dourif's Hyder DeVries. Love that. Love their performances. And Kyle MacLachlan's performance, even though I don't agree with how he established the main story of Paul Atreides and his transformation, at the end, the performance of Kyle MacLachlan was great. And love Max von Sydow's Liet Kynes. And the still suits. Love the still suit design. And Sting is iconic. A dashing, young-ish Patrick Stewart, who would go on to have a bit of success in the sci-fi world as well. I liked his Gurney Halleck. He actually had the balisette and he played it. It was great. I liked the sandworms too. They built a lot of that stuff, and I think pretty faithful to how the actual sandworm ride works, like how a rider would get on, and they actually showed the rotating of the sandworm. So that was cool. Kyle MacLachlan also shared a very touching tribute. He says, 42 years ago, for reasons beyond my comprehension, David Lynch plucked me out of obscurity to star in his first and last big-budget movie. He clearly saw something in me that even I didn't recognize. I owe my entire career and life really to his vision. What I saw in him was an enigmatic and intuitive man with a creative ocean bursting forth inside of him. He was in touch with something the rest of us wish we could get to. Our friendship blossomed on Blue Velvet and then Twin Peaks, and I always found him to be the most authentically alive person I'd ever met. David was in tune with the universe and his own imagination on a level that seemed to be the best version of human. He was not interested in answers because he understood that questions are the drive that makes us who we are. They are our breath. While the world has lost a remarkable artist, I've lost a dear friend who imagined a future for me and allowed me to travel in worlds I could never have conceived on my own. At the end, he says, I will miss him more than the limits of my language can tell and my heart can bear. My world is that much fuller because I knew him, and that much emptier now that he's gone. David, I remain forever changed, and forever your Kale. Thank you for everything. Regardless of the contentious time that he had on the set of Dune, it did start a wonderful friendship and collaboration between David Lynch and Kyle MacLachlan, and it cemented what kind of filmmaker he wanted to be and how he wanted to tell those stories. He didn't want to be a big budget filmmaker. He had a very specific vision and was very specific in how he wanted to tell those stories. I definitely applaud his creativity and his drive and his storytelling. At the time, even though that this was not the best working environment for him for Dune, it did introduce so many people to that story and to those novels. So applaud his efforts there. And he realized through all of it, through the fire of working with Warner Brothers and just his big budget productions, that he didn't want to be that kind of filmmaker. He wanted full creative control to be able to tell the kinds of stories that resonated with him and that he wanted to share in his own way. And again, asked questions. And his influence will surely be felt in cinema. How Dune looked, I love the vision of it. Even if there's issues that I have with how the story was adapted, it looked amazing. I loved costume design, production design, and it was an iconic look for so many things that would go on to influence the franchise itself. There was a lot of games that came afterwards that still held to that visual interpretation of Frank Herbert's universe. His creativity did shine through, even though the process itself was so toxic for him and difficult for him as a filmmaker. But we did see some amazing contributions, and it did have such an impact on his filmmaking career that definitely continues, and his influence will continue to be felt. He embraced the weird, which was nice, and that's something that a lot of people wish Denis Villeneuve would do, is embrace the weird, embrace details and opulence instead of that more minimalistic look that he's going with. So David Lynch definitely embraced the strangeness of Frank Herbert's stories and just went off on that with his creativity. The Spacing Guild Navigators sequences, you remember it visually. It definitely stands out. And that's one of my favorite sequences from his interpretation. Interestingly, the design for the Guild Navigators in Lynch's adaptation went on to influence some of Frank Herbert's later writings in the Dune saga. So ultimately, despite Lynch considering the project a failure, those standout elements of his film left a lasting impression on so many people, all the way to the author himself, which stands as a testament to the depth of Lynch's creativity and the meaningful contributions his vision made to the Duneverse. But I'm curious to know what you think of David Lynch as a filmmaker and what he means to the world of cinema. Is there a particular aspect of his adaptation of Dune that you appreciate most? Let me know your thoughts in the comment section below. I hope you enjoyed this video. Leave a like if you did, and be sure to subscribe for more sci-fi and fantasy news, theories, and lore. And if you're looking for other ways to show your appreciation, you can check out my Patreon page, where members get access to exclusive content and perks. Thank you all so much for your support, and as always, have a very nerdy day.